again for tuning in. This is episode 2 of Speak Easy with Haroon, a place where I have really long conversations and chats with artists, creatives and troublemakers. And it's episode 2. It's going to be another solo episode as I get together some of the interview episodes for you. I wanted to have a conversation with you today about attention. Where your attention goes, your life follows. It's wild how just one comment, just a handful of words can steal a whole week of your life. And if you let it, then you can end up having your attention sit completely in the wrong place. So while I've been working on bringing this next episode to you, I recently lost an entire week. I lost it to negative attention. And what caused that? I had hurtful comments from someone close to me. Really, really hurtful comments. And the end result was that I simply spiraled. I doubled down on feeling the negativity, the self-talk. If I spoke to any one of my best friends the way that I spoke to myself, there would be a restraining order out on me. And it's interesting the way in which we are, what we're willing to accept in terms of how we are with ourselves, vis-a-vis, I would argue, quite often the higher standards we set for how we are with others. And that's another conversation for another time. However, before I end up delivering, interview-based episodes, of which that will be the core of this show. Having said that, these sorts of solo episodes are also going to become a part of this. This wasn't part of the original format, but as I'm working through this reboot and relaunch of the show, formats are getting switched up. I was going to give you an interview-based episode. However, as I've said, I lost some time to negative attention. But within that, I was inspired for an idea of an episode that I wanted to do with you guys, which is what we're doing today. And it was inspired by Chase Jarvis and his book, Never Play It Safe. Chase Jarvis is a guy who cut his teeth rising through the ranks as a photographer. He then started this incredible business called Creative Live, which was an online learning platform. It was acquired by a big public company. Sadly, the company is now defunct. It's been shuttered, which is a shame because during its heyday, I was one of its paying subscribers. So if you're listening, if you're watching Chase Jarvis, massive shout out and thank you for, the many great years that platform was active and really useful for creatives like myself. I wouldn't be here without it. So I was going through this incredible spiral over the last, I believe it was probably last week. Today is Sunday, December 7th, I believe. Sunday, December 7th, 2025. And last week, it was absolute pandemonium, just what was going on in my head, where I allowed myself to get to. And as I was busy losing this entire week, time that could have been spent on delivering another one of these episodes to you, I'm here now. Time that could have been spent working on the next iteration or the next draft of my manuscript for my next poetry collection, B-sides and outtakes. So many things that could have been done as I was coming out of this spiral, or as I was kind of in it, but it was dissipating and I was realizing that something needed to change. One of the things that I love to do is I love to then read. Reading calms me down, it regulates my nervous system. And I believe that for those of you who have trouble regulating your nervous system, I strongly believe, or I strongly suggest that you should take up reading. Turn everything off, turn your phone, TV, all digital distractions. Sit down with a book and just see what it does for your nervous system. I know that it did great things for mine, and I think that it can do great things for yours. And I was reading Chase Jarvis's book, Never Play It Safe. There's a chapter on attention. And I feel like it hits at exactly the perfect time, because ultimately what I wanted to talk to you about is how easily your attention can get hijacked. I could easily talk about things like social media, the way that our dopamine gets hijacked by a lot of modern technology and apps. There'll be a time for that. I'm not averse to talking about it, but I think what really struck me was how we can let other people, when we give other people that power over us. Because when people say things to us, so, there's that moment when someone says something really sharp, and instead of brushing it off, you take it in. And those people who do that, maybe they're being malicious, maybe they're not. People aren't always self-aware of the impact of their comments, and some people are they're hurt, they're traumatized, they have their own stuff going on. Regardless, I know what I did, and I know what many of you who are watching this will also do. You replay it, you feed it, and you water it like the plant that you don't even like. Why would we even do that? Before you realize it, a day disappears, or in my case, a week disappears. Myself, in that week, I gave attention to a wound. The wound's not even new. The comment that was made to me isn't even the kind of comment. It's not new. Talking to a friend about it over dinner a couple of days ago, and he brought up a really valid point. Are you surprised? Is it something new? Then my answer's no. What I saw within that week was just how fast attention can turn into self-destruction. I didn't do the things that really matter to me, the things that are central to my identity: writing, working on creating my book, focusing on bringing this podcast to you and really honing it into something that will be indispensable to you. I could come up with excuses. Some of you who are listening to this might be neurodivergent. I am. Maybe your brain's wired like mine. I am autistic. I've got ADHD, hypersensitive. No doubt those of you who either are neurodivergent or you have someone in your life you care for or you love who's neurodivergent, you'll understand RSD, rejection sensitive dysphoria. So yeah, if your brain is wired like mine, or the brain of someone that you love and care for is wired like mine, the hurt doesn't just land, it penetrates. You don't just feel the words. You live inside them. And I know what happened to me, and I'm sure it's happened to you as well. Your attention, it will just expand until the pain fills whatever space you're in. Living room, kitchen, bedroom, wherever you are. It's not a weakness, and it's not a moral failing. It's wiring, but your wiring isn't your destiny. At least I don't want it to be my destiny. So what I really learned from reading Chase Jarvis's chapter on attention is that we have agency. That's a concept that is really, really resonating with me in 2025. Agency, being high agency. Someone who you should really look up is a guy called George Mack. George, and then his surname is M-A-C-K. He's done some great episodes on Chris Williamson's podcast, Modern Wisdom, around mental models. And he has his own website as well, where he talks about high agency. You can find him, I believe, on Twitter, Threads, Substack. Great guy to follow. So Chase Jarvis reminded me in this chapter about the power that I have, the power that we have, that you have. The moment you lift your head out of the fog, something meaningful is waiting for you. There was a line in the chapter, attention is identity. That really, really stuck with me. I gave my attention to really negative, hurtful comments, ones that are based around my identity, or at least how someone sees my identity. And I made that my identity. The hurt person, the angry person, the person who's self-loathing. But if you're listening to this, if you're a creative, and creatives are hypersensitive people. I'm hypersensitive. If you have any appreciation of the arts, creativity, especially if you're a budding creative or you are further along that journey, yeah, you're hypersensitive. However, your identity isn't just that. It isn't the pain and the hurt or whatever you've been through. Your identity is someone, well, it's whatever you choose it to be. If you're a creative, then that identity is most definitely centered around, I'd say, empathy, generosity. To make art is an act of empathy. It's generosity. It's something that I believe, and it's a belief that I picked up and learned through reading and engaging with a lot of material by Seth Godin, someone who's also really worth checking out. I'm almost certain that people have said these things to me for years and decades, and some people aren't shy to remind me that. But sometimes the lesson arrives exactly when you're ready to receive it. So, through reading Chase Jarvis's book, and particularly focusing on the chapter on attention, I made a shift. I started purchasing more whiteboards, and I've been unfurling the contents of this neurodivergent brain that is just packed with so many different ideas, thoughts, goals, projects. And I started unfurling it all, putting it onto these whiteboards, and just, I guess, getting to the point where I am doing this episode for you guys. Instead of reacting, you start choosing your attention. And when you withdraw attention from the hurt, something that I had to do, easier said than done, but it's something I think it's worth striving for me and for you. And when you give it back to your goals, your healing, and your art, everything shifts. Because reality is no different. Between that state of choosing to focus your attention on the hurt or choosing to focus your attention on your healing, your goals, your dreams, your creativity, your generosity towards others, I can assure you nothing changed. I still live in the same place. I still own the same books. Still have the same amount of money, give or take a few pounds, a few quid here or there in my bank account. All that changes is where I choose to put my attention, where you choose to put your attention. Nothing that you want, and it could be anything. You may not necessarily have like these big, crazy, lofty goals. Maybe you just want to be more present for your partner, for your family, for your children. Nothing that you want is achievable until you reclaim that attention. And that's something that I worked on hard, and I'm still working hard on since the week of just non-stop spiraling. Personally, I believe that every dream you have depends on where your attention rests each day. Certain things that I've done where I've been missing deadlines, those dreams are impacted massively by where I chose to put my attention. Didn't choose brilliantly last week, but this week I've been moving steadily into a more positive direction, one where there's a little bit more light. I don't want to give you guys a false impression of things are bad, and you make a decision, you snap your fingers, and it's just like binary. You just go from a 0 to a 1, 0 to a 1. It's not like that. We're not computers, we're people. So, I lost a week. And maybe you've lost weeks or months. I know I have, sometimes even years. Some could even argue decades. But that moment when you realize that attention is a choice, that you have agency, that's the moment when you start getting your life back. So, I would strongly recommend much as you hopefully enjoy this episode, I'd say go pick up a copy of Chase Jarvis's book, Never Play It Safe, and read that early chapter on attention. Revisit the idea, revisit the chapter, and revisit yourself. And that's the only way that any of us are going to get to where we want to go to. So look, these are just a few reflections from myself as I was going through it and just really saying some negative things to myself and bemoaning the fact that I was very derailed from giving you a second episode. I decided to actually make this episode about what I was going through. I felt like it was really important to document this. I guess first and foremost for myself. But at the same time, the whole point of this podcast is to document originally it was about documenting conversations. Now it's about documenting those conversations, but also my own personal reflections. So that I can benefit, but also so that you can. And maybe you hear something here and you want to build on that. And you maybe want to get back to me and say, hey, look, that's a great point, but there's some other things you haven't considered, or here's some of my insights. I'd love to hear from you. Look, I can be found at Haroon, which is HAROON, at Haroon Creates. That's HAROON Creates, all one word. Haroon at harooncreates.com. That's my email address. If you want to find me on Instagram, the podcast is Speak Easy with Haroon, HAROON. So it's all just one long word in the Instagram handle. You can also find me on Instagram at Haroon Creates. You can find me also at Twitter, Instagram, Threads, all of the socials. That's my one consistent handle that I use everywhere. DM me. Give me some thoughts. What I'd love for you guys to do is, if this episode in any way, shape has resonated, if you're on YouTube, put a like and a comment. If it's Spotify, please, if you can, leave me a 5-star review. Same thing with Apple, 5-star reviews. I think you can leave comments in Spotify as well. Subscribe. Click on the bell so that you get notifications on Spotify for new podcast episodes. In the next week, you are going to get an episode from me featuring an interview. It's going to be an old one, but it'll be revamped with a few reflections at the beginning and at the end. It's a reissued episode. I'm also working really, really hard for you guys to book new guests, to record those episodes, and to bring you really fresh insights based on, I guess, who I am and how I interact with people now, but also based on artists and where they're sitting here in this reality now in 2025. Again, I just want to thank you and wish you well. Live long and prosper. Until next week.